The Super Bowl champ still celebrating as Tom Brady makes his rounds on late night television. He joined the Late Late Show with James Corden and talked about his Lombardi toss that we see right there. Thank God that it was caught, and what his wife Giselle told him after winning his 7th title.
All of a sudden the game ends and you realize, okay, the season's over. We won the Super Bowl. They're dropping confetti. And this year was obviously different with, a lot of the protocols. But anyway, we was looking for my family. And I said, where's my family? Where's my family? And all of a sudden I see my oldest son run over to me. Dad, and I gave him a big hug. I saw my 2 little ones. And all of a sudden I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug. And just as I did it, she says, what more do you have to prove?
And what did you say in that moment? What did you say?
I just gave her a big hug. I was trying to figure out a way to change the subject really quick. Right. So I think I moved on to something else pretty quickly.
Oh, Brady. Now with more Super Bowl rings than any single franchise with number 7, he helped lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to their 2nd Super Bowl title. It was quite the year for the Bucs, finishing the regular season with an 11-5 record. When it mattered most, the team came together and they performed. Let's welcome in our Ryan Wilson and Jonathan Jones. Now, everyone has probably heard this stat by now, but just in case you haven't, when the Bucs beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, every single point was scored by a player who was new to the team in 2020. And obviously, all of that was coming from new quarterback Tom Brady. So how much of his winning mentality does he bring to this team, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about TB12 and what he has brought to that team. And they thought Jason Light and Bruce Arians knew that this team was close before they got Tom Brady. And remember, of course, they were eyeing Tom Brady or Teddy Bridgewater. They knew they weren't going to bring back Jameis Winston because of the turnovers. And what Tom Brady did was, in the first 5 weeks of the season, the Buccaneers were in the top 2 most penalized teams in the NFL. And it was really that Chicago Bears loss, that really surprising loss in primetime, that got things turned around for them, where for the final 12 weeks of the season, the Bucs were the least penalized team in the NFL. That's the Tom Brady effect, because of course the Patriots over the last 15, 20 years have been one of the least penalized teams in the NFL, if not the least penalized teams. And so it was about discipline, and of course it was about talent, and talent was willing to flock to Tom Brady in the form, of course, of Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown. But even more than that, guys, Leonard Fournette was willing to say, you know what, I'll take a little less. I'll go over there. I'll keep quiet, even though I'm not getting the rock, because I believe that we can win a championship. That's what TB12 brings an organization.
Yeah, JJ, you talked about the penalties and how they improved for the second half of the season. At week 12, the Buccaneers were 7-5. They just lost 2 in a row, had lost 3 of their last 4, and everyone, myself included, had questions about the direction of this team. That's just how long it took for everyone to come together. You talked about how they moved on from Jameis Winston because of the turnovers. Tom Brady had his fair share of turnovers early in the season as he was getting acclimated to Byron Leftwich's and Bruce Arians' offense. But after week 12, everything came together to the point that they didn't lose another game all the way through the Super Bowl. Obviously, Tom Brady had a lot to do with that. Tom Brady's history of winning in the 20 years he was with New England had a lot to do with that. And also that defense, coached up by Todd Bowles, had a lot to do with it. Everything came together perfectly from January to the beginning of February. And at the end of the day, Tom Brady had Super Bowl number 7. By the way, Jenny, I thought it was pretty funny when he was talking to James Corden. Handsome quarterback hugs supermodel wife after 7th Super Bowl victory. That's a pretty good life for old Tommy Brady there.
Oh, if we could all be Tom Brady or Giselle, life would be so good. All right, with 20-plus potential unrestricted free agents, including 7 who started in the Super Bowl, the Bucs, they have a lot of balls in the air right now. So, Ryan, take us through some of the top free agents Tampa needs to handle.
Yeah, so they're middle of the road in terms of salary cap space available, and they can cut some guys they want to create some more space. The good news is we've heard players say that maybe they'll take something approaching a hometown discount to stay. We'll see what that actually means. Mike Evans has even said that he'd be willing to take less to keep some of those guys around. But here you see a list of guys here. They're the highest paid Buccaneers, some guys that could be on the chopping block, or excuse me, some guys that are free agents. Shaq Barrett, the edge rusher, who was dynamic in that Super Bowl. Chris Godwin, who's one of the best free agents, or soon to be free agents at wide receiver. He's going to get a lot of demand on the market if they don't keep him. Gronkowski, as JJ mentioned earlier. So there are a lot of names to go through there. Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, and Ndamukong Suh. Levante David is on the wrong side of 30, but he is still playing at a high level. These are all decisions that Jason Licht and Bruce Arians are going to have to make in terms of how many guys can they bring back, how can they fit them all under the cap, and how can they continue to win football games coming off that Super Bowl victory.
JJ, you saw the list there. Which of those guys do you think that they should bring back?
Well, you know, they are going to franchise tag Chris Godwin if they can't reach a deal with Chris Godwin. He's a fantastic wide receiver and is at the top of Pete Prisco's free agent list for good reason. If it were me, I'd say, you know what, Chris Godwin, love you, buddy. Go out there and make your money. We want to double tag Shaq Barrett. They tagged him last year. Bring him back on the tag next year, because Patrick Mahomes was the dude who was scrambling for almost 500 yards before he threw the ball in Super Bowl 55. That was because of Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul. And my co-worker and colleague, London Fletcher, on that other pregame show on CBS Sports Network, he talks all the time. He was on those Greatest Show on Turf teams, and he said, and has said, the reason that we didn't really turn into a dynasty, there was attrition on the defensive side. They focused too much on the offense. And he's not saying sour grapes or anything, but look at the defense that was there and how those guys just departed. Well, you have Tom Brady. And as we have talked about, Ryan and I both, guys will come to Tampa and play for less money. Mike Evans willing to take less money. Gronk, that's not an issue. AB, where else is he going to go? You know, Leonard Fournette, he might go off and get paid somewhere else. But, you know, it's the running back position. It's fungible. And you have, of course, a fantastic offensive line. So what I would do is I would continue to invest in the defense. That was such a big part of their turnaround and keeping things above level for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And again, putting Patrick Mahomes in very difficult situations. No one got after Patrick Mahomes like that. And I know that the Chiefs had issues along their offensive line, but you have to be strong up front and rushing the passer in today's NFL. I would make sure that Shaq Barrett, Levante David are taken care of, but I will tell you this, it's likely going to be Chris Godwin tag. Shaq Barrett is probably going to be walking because he's not taking a hometown discount, and the Bucs are going to do everything within their power to keep Levante David there at linebacker.
Well, defense wins championships. We certainly saw that in this Super Bowl. Ryan, are there any other free agents on the market right now that they should target?
Well, I think it makes sense to try to keep Shaq Barrett, but JJ outlined why that's going to be tough to do. And also the salary cap situation is one that's going to pinch them. They could look at someone like Jarrell Casey, who had a good year a few years ago. He's battled injuries. He's still playing at a pretty high level when he's healthy, and he'll probably be able to be had on the cheap. JJ talked about Chris Godwin. I think if you want to keep that wide receiver core together, Chris Godwin is a good place to start. But again, you're squeezed by the salary cap dollars. And even if Chris Godwin leaves, Tom Brady will have in the remaining wide receivers something much better than he had the last 4 or 5 years in New England. He will be fine there. And then, of course, Rob Gronkowski, he will come on the cheap. That's not a real issue. If he wants to play again, he'll come back and he'll do it in Tampa Bay. Here the team needs to see here. And if they want to address some guys during the draft, Travis Etienne is a name, the running back out of Clemson. Levi Onwuzurike is a defensive tackle out of Washington who is getting a lot of buzz. He might be a bottom of the first round guy if they want to go towards the draft to find some of these guys. And Jason Licht, by the way, has hit home run after home run in these recent draft classes, a lot on the defensive side. And as JJ pointed out, that's been their strength and one they need to continue to build on to keep this thing going.
So can they run it back? Can they go for 2 in a row? JJ, what are your early expectations for Tampa Bay in 2021?
Yeah, they absolutely can run it back, sure. And I know they don't want to use that phrase as, that's the Kansas City Chiefs phrase. We can use that phrase. Sure, they can run it back. They can repeat there in Tampa, especially when you look at the NFC South and Carolina's not there. Atlanta's probably going to go through some sort of minor rebuild, but no one's going to pick them to win the division, and you have to figure out what the New Orleans Saints are going to do up against the Caps. So the NFC South is theirs. And if they continue to play in January like they played this past January, on the road especially, then yeah, I'd have to say that they are among the favorites in the NFC. Obviously, you look at a Green Bay Packers, and yeah, they're still going to be there, no doubt about that. But as long as you have Tom Brady, that's going to get the job done. I mean, Aaron Rodgers just had his defense turn Tom Brady over 3 times, and he was playing in Lambeau Field, and he still lost to Tom Brady. So if you have Tom Brady, he's not done. He's going for 8. He might go for 9. Why don't we just make it double digits? I'm betting on the Bucs.
Yeah, Tom Brady is where the conversation starts. And the most important thing after Tom Brady is that offensive line. You have to keep him upright. And if you do that, you have those two things. You can work around a defense that's meaty because Tom Brady will do Tom Brady things. And it's sort of funny to think about it, Jenny, because we're in an age where we're talking about quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. Tom Brady is the exact opposite of that. He is not changing. I don't know if he's necessarily getting slower. He still seems to be playing at a pretty high level inside the pocket. But he's going against conventional wisdom about how these quarterbacks are playing, and he's doing it better than anyone. And he is, for a reason, the GOAT. So Tom Brady 1, offensive line 2, number 3, everything else seems to work itself out.
All right, you heard me say run it back, obviously stealing the Chiefs' whole slogan there. It's early, I get it. But if you had to have a pick right now for the Super Bowl next year, who's in it? Let's go JJ first.
I'm going to
put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs because I still have a hard time betting against Patrick Mahomes. There wasn't a brain drain there in Kansas City. So, fool me once, fool me twice. If they don't keep this defense together, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's the way you beat Patrick Mahomes. If they're going to let some of those guys walk, and I don't think that they should, I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I wanted to go with the Chiefs too. It's an easy choice, I think, just because of Patrick Mahomes, just because of the chip on his shoulder, and just because Andy Reid. My whole thing used to be Andy Reid off the bye because he was unbeatable. He got beat this time off the bye by Bruce Arians, who it turns out is really good off the bye as well. But I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder as well going into this season, or at least coach with a chip on his shoulder. If he has to play, then things are really bad for Kansas City. But I think it starts with Patrick Mahomes. They do have some issues in terms of trying to sign some guys, some salary cap issues. But look, 44-year-old Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. Even it sounds crazy to say it out loud. I'm going to roll with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
All right, JJ, Ryan, don't go anywhere. We got much more coming from you. Thank you for all the insight on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And up next, we've got a team that's really taken over the AFC East. The Bills clinched their first division title since 1995, led by that man right there, Josh Allen. We'll break down Buffalo next on HQ.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.